Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 243 of the SoxProspects.com podcast. We're the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined, as always, by our director of scouting, my fellow companion in depression that we will not be in Greenville for Joe Davis bobblehead night this weekend, Ian Kundle. Ian, we have new rankings, we have new rosters. This is that episode of the spring that kind of writes itself, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot to talk about. Baseball is happening. There's like actual games going on. There's been minor league games. There's been major league games.
There have been.
And there's a lot to talk about, especially going on with the Red Sox, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Happy opening day, everybody. Today is Major League opening day, not for the Boston Red Sox, who their opener
was supposed to be.
It was supposed to be.
It's supposed to be.
You know, it's kind of funny
that they
do this.
Shocker. Northeast weather bad in April? Who could have seen that coming?
Who would have guessed?
No way.
And this is why you build in off days. So they're going to.
It's also why I just still. Why have they not figured out a way to make the schedule so that the northern teams start in the South in April?
Domes.
No, but also just there's enough teams that have domes or in the South that you
That's
could
fair.
make the schedule so that like the Red Sox start in Tampa, like, you know, the Yankees start in somewhere, I don't know, Toronto. Like you could make it work so that no team is playing like in the snow or the sleet or the freezing rain. Like,
yeah, you could. Yeah. But they want to get their opening day money. Got to get that bag.
It's also fun watching games played in like the freezing rain or like the fog where you can like barely see the pitches, like that Guardians Royals game from earlier.
But
yeah,
that's going to be $1 in the cookie jar now too.
That's a bad one. But yeah, like that game earlier, you could barely see off the camera at times.
Yeah, the camera was all fogged up. Yeah, that was rough. But at any rate, yeah. So we're going to talk about rankings. We're going to talk about rosters. We're going to talk about your emails, the transactions that have happened since our last episode. And like I mentioned, your emails, you can hit us up at podcast@soxprospects.com. Well, we always say we want to talk about what you want to hear about. So hit us up there. We've got a few this episode. And of course, if you want to support the show, you can do that a couple other ways. You can give us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever it is that you listen, YouTube. Give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. And you can also support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. And I was talking with someone today about this. You have to go to patreon.com/SoxProspects. If you just go to patreon.com, it's going to think you're a content creator. You have to actually go to our site. And if you go there, you should be able to sign up, pledge a certain amount per episode. I am a little delinquent in uploading. Ian has sent me Patreon game updates from spring training. I've got to do my own. He sent 4 of them. So I've got to get those up. I've got to record my own, and we're going to have our Patreon exclusive content related to the rankings. You'll find out who prospects number 61 to 70 are. You might find out what are, I think we do top 20, might have been top 30, but I think it's top 20 rankings individually. Each are. Those get uploaded depending on what tier you are in per episode. So make sure you hit us up on patreon.com/SoxProspects.
In-game reports from me starting next week with Worcester opening day.
Worcester, Boston. Nice.
Those will start up next week.
Love it.
And those go up. Those are good because it's kind of it's the first impression. So it's me off the cuff. So sometimes you'll get some takes on guys that you don't get on the normal podcast because I actually have time to digest the info.
Ian Kundle raw. I like it. It's like Eddie Murphy, but funnier.
Uncensored. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. He does them with his shirt off. No. Anyway, yeah, so we'll jump right into it, I guess. Let's talk really quick, Ian, before we get to the rankings and the rosters themselves. What's happened since the last episode? It's only been about a week, so we don't have a ton to catch up on, but a ton has happened. So in addition to the rosters getting set, and we'll talk about the minor league stuff with those. So the Red Sox set the opening day roster. I believe last episode, Ian, it couldn't have happened because this happened on Monday. On Monday, the Red Sox selected Tyler Danish to the Major League roster, which made it seem like he had made the team, right? But I hadn't mentioned this because Danish had an opt-out if he wasn't added to the 40-man roster in his contract based on the information that I got for March 26th. He was obviously still around after that and not on the 40-man, so I figured he had not opted out. What appears to have happened, and this is pure conjecture on my part, is that he and the team must have mutually agreed to delay that opt-out date based on this, the schedule. essentially. So on April the 4th, the team added him to the major league roster to add him to the 40. He has an option remaining and eventually did get optioned, but we thought he had made the team. And at that point, the way that the team had cut it down, John Schreiber went down, Franchi Cordero went down, Rob Refsnyder went down. It seemed like the only question was going to be what the last bullpen spot would be, whether Hansel Robles was going to be ready. It seemed like he was going to go down for a bit. It seemed like Jonathan Aruz made the team. They said that they wanted to keep 13 position players, 15 pitchers. But then today, the team surprised us all, adding Hansel Robles after all, also selecting Travis Shaw. So now you've got two 40-man spots you've got to free up. One spot they freed up by designating Ralph Garza Jr. for assignment. No surprise there.
Not surprising at all.
At all. Tried to clear him, and he immediately was claimed by Tampa. Just immediately.
Yeah, that was weird to me. I was wondering, did he get maybe he got DFA'd last night and we just didn't hear? And
no,
that's what I'm guessing.
It probably would be today. It's probably just, I don't know. I mean, I guess he must have. I don't know. Because the thing is, the only way that you would be off waivers that quick is if the first team.
But they're not first because it's by reverse. That's why I'm confused. That's why I'm wondering if he got DFA'd last night and we just didn't hear about it or something. Because that was the only way it would make sense to me, the timing of it. Because it was literally it was half an hour after we found out.
He hasn't pitched yet he hadn't pitched yet at all for Worcester. Yeah.
But it was half an hour after it was reported that, or the Red Sox released their roster, he was claimed. So that's why I was just wondering if that happened. But yeah.
Yeah, that's actually probably a good call. I think I'm down with that being what happened. And then today they also designated Edward Bizardo for assignment, who is ranked in the 30s for us in our new rankings right now. Ian, I don't have those up, but a little bit of a surprise. It kind of caught all of us a little off guard that he was the guy that got DFA'd. So
in a little bit, I think that I kind of think that the writing was on the wall and they're trying to sneak him through waivers. Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting that he barely pitched in spring training. I don't think that was
one game.
And I think the only reason you would do that is if this is coming and you're trying not to let other teams get a look at him, or B, you're really truly you just don't care and it's whatever, he's not a guy we're considering. And based on I think it's probably I lean more it's the former on that, and that they're going to try and sneak him through waivers. Because if you're going to do it, the time to do it is opening day when everyone's playing roster roulette and basically just trying to fill stuff out. Because teams will set their opening day rosters. They'll have their 40-man set. Their affiliates are set. You can try and sneak someone through. We saw Jason Rosario. They tried to sneak through. That didn't work. He got claimed, even though he got DFA'd again today.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if that's the case. And I think kind of looking at the roster breakdown of Worcester. Mm-hmm. I do think that played into it, and I'm sure we'll touch into it. We'll touch on it a little bit, but their current 40-man roster. They don't have a lot of usable arms in the minor league level. They have obviously on the 40. Yes, on the 40. They have obviously good prospects on the 40, and they have some interesting guys. But at this stage, if someone got hurt, the only option really that I think they'd be comfortable calling up is Bizardo. Darwinzon Hernandez is obviously working on things in the minors, and we saw in the first game, I think he gave up his first outing and gave up no hits, but he walked 3 guys or something in 2 innings,
including his last couple of batters. It was 2+, but then he clearly just lost it at the end. Right?
Yeah, and then Connor Siebold did not look good today again, which is a red flag again. Doesn't look like the same pitcher. And Josh Winkowski isn't ready. And so that left Bizardo or his spot as the last kind of, usable pitcher. And I think Tyler Danish just gives more options. He can go longer outings than Bizardo. Bizardo's a 1-inning reliever. Danish can go 2, maybe 3 innings in an outing. And I also think that Bizardo just got passed by some other 1-inning relievers in the system. They have guys like Zach Kelly, Jacob Wallace, Frank German, guys in AA, but they talked up German a ton during camp. Yeah. I just think there's certain guys that they like more than him who aren't on the 40-man. And when it came down to it, he was the one who kind of was the only option, especially after Austin Davis, Phillips Valdez, and Jonathan Rouse all made the team.
And it's interesting, the fact that he only pitched the 1 game in Major League camp. He did pitch on the backfields. He was healthy, according to Alex Cora. And it does seem though.
Yeah, I know he pitched one of the days when I was down there. I was at the Twins complex that day.
Yeah. And I think what it is, I think the issue is that, not the issue, but I think that when you look at it, he's pitched how many innings in the past 11 months, 10 months, not many. Like he got hurt at the very beginning of last season in Worcester.
Actually, do you know how many he threw last year? Because I'm looking at it right now.
15.
17, including three in Boston, 11 in Worcester, 4 in the FCL.
Yeah. And so if no one's seen him in 2 years, does that help him clear?
I think it does. I think it does.
Teams aren't going to, I mean, look, they know what they saw in Instructs in 2020.
Teams want the most recent info. And if they don't have that info, they're less likely to DFA something they know for an unknown, or sorry.
DFA their own guy. Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep,
so, like the bird in hand, that's saying, that's kind of like what you're looking at when you don't have information about someone like Bizardo.
That's a good
point. I think that's why you do it now is you can't carry him on. If you carry him on Worcester, you have to pitch him. And so eventually someone is good. The scouts are out right now at the minor league affiliates. So
this is the time to sneak him through.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. And that's the only thing that makes sense to me for why you do it. And we'll see if we might not work. Someone can easily call their bluff, but if they can get him off the roster, I think it would be advantageous to them, because I just think with the way the 40-man is constructed right now, as we've talked about, it's pretty imbalanced. They have too many guys who aren't, ready to help the big league team, that getting him off, and if they can keep him, would be really good, because it would give them another spot to kind of play with.
I guess. And I mean, here's the thing to keep in mind is that in a month, the rosters are going back to 26. And 2 pitchers are going down. So everyone who was saying, like, why didn't they DFA Phillips Valdez is on the major league roster right now. If they DFA Phillips Valdez, then they've got to put someone else on the major league roster. Clearly they like Valdez better than Bizardo. So,
I mean, Valdez had a great camp. He pitched he pitched really well. I think he also threw a bunch more. He threw like 5 or 6 innings in spring training, whereas
the reasoning's clear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Phillips, if you look at it.
Well, and also, sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Who's going back? So when rosters go back to 26, it's 2 pitchers going down, because the rule is going to go back.
Literally. I was about to say it literally has to be 2 pitchers.
It has to be, because the pitching will be capped at 13 out of the 26. Who goes down right now? It's probably Valdez and maybe Austin Davis. Does Austin Davis?
I don't think Austin Davis has an option.
Probably doesn't have options. So it's probably Cutter Crawford. I mean, or you DFA someone.
But I don't think it's Cutter Crawford either. I think Cutter Crawford is legit. I mean, we'll talk about it. I think he's legit on the team. I don't think
he's definitely legit on the team, but there's also just the, if everyone's throwing while you're sitting down the guy with options.
Austin Davis is out of options.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, and this goes back to what we were talking about, Danish. Valdez can give them multiple innings and be the guy who, we're down 7-0 in, the 6th inning, and we need to throw someone out there that we don't really care about. Just go to throw 2-3 innings. We don't really care.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll see, what winds up coming with Bizardo, whether he clears or not, whether he sticks around. It's going to be very, very interesting to see if he gets claimed, and we'll have to go from there. Looking at other transactions, Ian, obviously, I guess we kind of glazed over this, but Darwinzon Hernandez got optioned to Worcester, which I think surprised a lot of people. But that said, we were kind of looking at this, and I know, Red Sox Stats has been talking a fair amount about it on Twitter, and it really it makes sense if you step back from it, given the fact that, he doesn't have a lot of time in AAA. Darwinzon Hernandez, in his first go round in Pawtucket in 2019, threw 17 innings, and that's it. And then in 2020, there was just Boston, where he threw 30 innings. And then last year in 2021, he pitched 40 innings in Boston. And I think he was in Worcester for 1 inning for rehab. And that's it. So the fact that he got optioned to Worcester, considering his struggles last year, it's consistency, it's command, it's the stuff there were bugaboos for him before. When you think it through, it's less surprising than it was at first, I think.
I also think the writing was kind of on the wall with the way that they addressed the left-handed pitching slots during the offseason.
With Strom and Diekman.
Yeah. Exactly. They obviously, I don't think they could have predicted Josh Taylor's going to be out, but they went out and got 2 legit lefties for the bullpen. And they already had Austin Davis. They had Josh Taylor potentially. So maybe they knew Josh Taylor.
I think because those were pretty late. So I think they might have known by that point.
Yeah.
But they were still looking right. They were still on the market, but getting them full.
Yeah. The fact that they got 2, though, kind of, there was no way they were carrying 5 lefties, basically. No. And I don't think there's any way they're carrying 4 lefties, frankly. So maybe there is when everyone's healthy, but we'll see. But
I think they almost kind of have to when everyone's healthy. Because when let's say Taylor's healthy in a week,
Well, you do. I mean, well, no, but that's for the first month. This when you get into like the 26-man team on a 13-man pitching staff,
no question.
You carry 4 lefties in the bullpen. That's kind of my point.
No question. Yeah. Okay, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that like the writing was kind of on the wall, and I think it'll be good for him developmentally. He has options, so his is like 40-man spot safe, but.
Agreed.
I think that his stuff is still very tantalizing. It's just the consistency and, as you said, the command and control. Like it's just not you can't walk guys at the rate he does and be like a quality major league pitcher. It's just unacceptable. And I think that getting him down to AAA is a good environment where he can actually work on things. It's less pressure down there. They can, and I think most importantly is they can throw him on a structured schedule. If he was still up on the big league team, like his usage would be so sporadic because there's no chance they trust him in competitive games.
And that's what happened to him in Boston last year.
Exactly.
Pitching because they didn't trust him.
And I guess a lot of people don't realize this. Minor league affiliates, and because I got some questions about it, the pitching schedule is all mapped out. Like they know who's pitching on a given day down to the relievers. Well, it's not like
you might have one or two guys like your closer or something.
Yeah, but it's not closer really only comes in, I think, in AAA. Like below that, it's completely mapped out for the most part.
Unless it's a guy who's like 2 years old for the league and you don't care about it.
Exactly. Like right. Miguel Suero will be like the closer in Salem probably this year. I don't even know if he's on that roster, but
I think
but yeah, like that's kind of how they do it. And with this, they know Darwinson will know he's pitching, he pitched opening day. He knows he's coming back. You had the thing is pitching again on Sunday, I think.
Yeah. Sunday. He's getting piggybacked by Kyle Hart. So they only intend for him to throw like 3 innings at a time. He's not being converted to starting. He's just working longer outings, which is perfect for what he needs to work on.
Exactly. Because in 1 inning, you can get away with bad command. Bad control, but longer outings, turning the lineup over, even if he's only going 3 innings, he's going to have to throw enough strikes to get that long. And we saw in his first outing, he didn't really do that. He struggled the later he got, but he needs to be pitching longer outings because he still has stuff that can blow guys away if he's on. And, throwing 10 pitches in an inning isn't going to do him any good long-term.
I mean, look at it in Boston, 2019, 26 walks and 30 and a third innings. In 2020, 8 walks and 8 and a third innings. In 2021, 31 walks in 40 innings. I mean, he's way too close to a walk an inning, which is completely unacceptable out of a major league reliever for a team that's trying to win. You can't deal with that. And yeah, he struck out 54 in 40 innings last year, but he struck out 57 in 30 innings in 2019, but you can't deal with that. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work. So that was an interesting transaction that, in hindsight, it does make some sense. The other thing, Ian, that we probably should hit on is the spring training cuts list. On March 31st, we got the first round or I guess the only round of cuts out of minor league camp. And there aren't as many as there used to be, in part because there's a 180 player domestic reserve list. And based on my count, the Red Sox must be at that number because I count 181, including all of the injured guys. So I'm sure like one of them's on the 60-day IL and doesn't
the minor league 60-day. Yeah,
the minor league 60-day. Like there's no probably like Thaddeus Ward or something is on the minor league 60-day IL. But the Red Sox released outfielder Cole Brannon, outfielder Dean Miller, infielder Jake McKenzie. Right-handers, I think they're all right-handers, Zach Skellinger, Yasel Santana, and then outfielder Angel Maeta and first baseman / catcher Cuba Bess. The headliner of that group, Ian, is obviously Cole Brannon, a former second-round pick, signed for an overslot $1.3 million bonus in 2017 as the second rounder behind, that was Houck, right?
Yeah, oops.
In his career, he hit like 190 something.
It was like 190.
Yeah.
That one was pretty obvious from the get-go. It was not going to work out. You swing and you miss sometimes. And I don't really, we don't need to bash him or anything, but there was never a major league player in there for me. And I'm not surprised that he got released given, it wasn't working out. There was no point in really keeping it going, in my opinion. I think I don't think we've had him ranked for years for that reason. So yeah, none of those are that surprising to me. The combination of like Skellinger was somewhat interesting. He just couldn't stay healthy. That happens. And then, the other guys were kind of like just low minors depth guys that they didn't have room for this year. So yeah, I don't think anything's really that surprising there.
I mean, it got bad when in 2020 he went and played in a college summer league and hit 118. Like, that's not a good look. So Cole Brandon experience is over. The rest of the guys are, Skellinger was an interesting pitcher at one point as someone who showed dynamite stuff for very short periods of time, but couldn't stay healthy. Skellinger, I think he got into the 30s on our rankings, maybe even the 20s when he had his periods in like spring training, when it'd be like, yo, this guy's throwing mid to high 90s with a, bastard.
It was like a plus slider. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just couldn't stay on the mound. I think for his career, he was drafted in the 6th round out of Seton Hall in that same 2017 draft. Let's see. In his career, 9, 19 and a third, 49 and a third, 57 and a third. Oh, that's very, let's see, 57 and 2/3, 58 and 2/3, 78 and 2/3.
Well, you're adding that up. I'll just say that he's the type of pick that I get.
93-ish innings in his career.
Yeah. I mean, and he was a 2nd round pick where they knew he had injury issues, but sixth round pick. They knew he had injury issues, but that's also why he fell to the 6th round and why they could sign him for $175K, because when he's healthy, his talent is significantly higher than that. It's just, he was never healthy. So yeah, I wonder, he strikes me as someone that another team will take a shot on though, because they'll see the stuff in some workouts and he'll look really good and they'll give him a shot.
It could be. I mean, the thing is, he's also just still extremely skinny, like, but yeah, it's too bad with him. And then, the other guys, it was no one who got above high A. Jake McKenzie was a utility infielder type who was signed as an undrafted free agent in 2020. And that year with the 5-round draft. Cuba Bass was an undrafted free agent that same year. He never got out of the complex. Maeta got up to Salem last year as an outfielder who at one point in the DSL was kind of interesting, but he hadn't really hit stateside. Dean Miller spent last year in Greenville. It was just kind of, hit 158 last year in Greenville as a 23-year-old, hit 189 in Salem as a 23-year-old. It was clear that kind of wasn't working. And then Yasel Santana, I had a guy who I think you thought he was interesting for a brief period of time when you saw him in Lowell in maybe 2018 Ian, or 19.
I mean, yeah, he was interesting, 4 years ago when he was in Lowell, and then the fact that he was in Salem 4 years later is kind of a problem there.
Yeah, he was someone last year between Salem and Greenville clearly as
the stuff just never developed.
Yeah,
it was just kind of, it is better. What it is. Like, it was good. It was fine when he was, a 19-year-old in Lowell, but if it never changes from then and the command and control doesn't come, that's not going to work.
You see 94 to 96 and it catches your eye. But I remember when we were down at spring training and we saw that with Angel Bizardo.
But then I said the same thing though,
that's what I'm saying. That's my point is it's like, yeah, okay, you've got velo. What else you got? Like,
exactly.
You got to do more with it than throw hard.
Yeah. Velo's enough to get you noticed. It's not enough to carry you through a system.
Yeah. And you've either got to have some wiggle or you've got to be able to locate or have secondaries or
exactly,
etc. So yeah. But that's that crew that got released. So I guess it kind of a natural transition, Ian, then onto the rosters. And should we start from the top with the team that's already debuted? Yes, the thumbs up.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself in time.
It's fine. So the Worcester Red Sox, the 2-0, and are they winning tonight? Behind?
No, they're losing.
They're losing. Okay. Worcester Red Sox, certainly a solid AAA team. Sometimes you get these AAA teams that are, very minor league free agent laden and boring. This strikes me as a pretty interesting team in AAA for the Red Sox, Ian. If you look at, let's see, I got to pull up the list that has all of the ranked guys starred. A shout out to Brian Lombardo and Eddie Hand, who've been doing terrific work on our social media with graphics and tweeting and posting. But looking at the Red Sox, I get the Worcester Red Sox. Let's start in the infield, where they're led by the number one prospect in the system in our rankings right now, Tristan Casas. Also there, Jeter Downs, Ryan Fitzgerald. The outfield has Jaron Duran, our current number 4 prospect. Behind the plate, Connor Wong and Ronaldo Hernandez also ranked. Some interesting minor league free agents around them as well, Ian. It's a group that I think we will see a number of these guys from over the course of the season, with Wong as basically your third catcher right now. Duran is definitely going to be up again at some point.
I will
Ryan
say
Fitzgerald is what?
Durant's swing, he's having a lot of trouble against fastballs, which was the concern that we had coming out of you and I. You and I saw him take BP the same day and playing games.
Looked at each other. Yeah.
I don't like where his hands are. I think his timing seems really bad and hard to kind of get. And he's really struggling with fastballs these first few days. And we'll get to the other person who's really struggling with fastballs in a little bit. But yeah, I'm definitely, my eyebrows are raised with what Duran's doing. I'm not really sure what the idea is here.
Well, he's still doing that hands low thing. It's just that he got rid of the leg kick. And it's is the leg kick what the problem was? I don't know.
He's not ending it. Like his stance is, there's very few hitters in the majors who have their hands where he does when he starts. And the fact that he has to jerk them back so far and up is just like, it's hard to be consistent with that and get your timing down. And
yeah,
I'm not a fan of what he's doing at the plate right now. I mean, we'll see. I mean, obviously I could be wrong, and I'm sure he's worked with the hitting coaches and everything, but just based on what I've seen from these first few games, and then also what I saw in spring, I'm not a fan of that, but I mean, we'll see.
Well, let's talk about Downs. I mean, we saw this in camp. He still looks like he looks defeated at the plate.
There was a point in last night's game where he had 17 swings this season and 11 of them were whiffs. And that's not good.
No, I saw him walk and it was very much, I don't want to swing walk.
And this is what I saw last season too with him, was that exact same thing. And I don't know what they do with him, because he's made changes. Like at the end of spring training, he was trying to leg kick and he had a very open stance, which was,
I think we were there when he switched, right?
Yeah. And that's different than what he did last year. But I kind of wish they just assigned him to Portland to start the year, honestly. I know it would have been a bat. I know that's the problem.
You can't now.
I know. And that's the thing, is like, I don't know what they do with him. Like, because I mean, he got the day off today, but
Duran got the day off today too. I mean,
I'm sure it was a planned day off.
Yeah, the Red Sox had said early, just for everyone's information, that guys aren't going to play 6 games a week to start.
No, they'll play 4 probably. Like
they'll play 4 tops. Yeah, they're going to get everyone in.
But still, it's very concerning that the same issues we saw last year are there still with him.
Mm-hmm. On the other hand, Tristan Casas, Ryan Fitzgerald, both off to hot starts. Casas with a
that was absurd. His power is crazy.
Oppo, it was Oppo, right? Yeah. Like Oppo, 107 off the bat.
But the thing is,
I don't think it got more than 20 feet above the ground.
It's also, though, if you watch that,
yeah,
he's so quick with his hands that he let that get so deep, and then he's just flicks the hands, the bat goes flying through the zone, and it's out. Like, he's a special hitter, and I think the other thing, and this is something that Red Sox Stats has been all over too, is his defense is actually, and I saw it in spring, it looked a lot better than it has in past years. And because of how big he is, he's so useful at first base. It's such a big target that he can get to balls that like shorter first basemen can't, because he's, as we talked about, like he's built like a giraffe, like, or an elephant. Like he's 6'6".
I like moose.
He's just massive. And so when you have that big of a target, and if you have soft hands, which he does, you can actually be a really big asset at first base. So that's definitely encouraging with him. And same thing with Fitzy. I mean, he's just hitting bombs. That's what he did. You know,
he's got 3. He's hit 2 tonight.
Yeah. He told Bradford that he likes to hit home. He tries to hit home run in every at bat. And he's hit 3 in 3 games. So yeah. I'm
interested to see how teams start to pitch him. Because once the book gets around on a guy, especially when you start having these 6-game series and you've seen a guy 1, 2, 3, 4 games, 5 games, 6 games in a row, you start to develop a game plan for him. I'm not saying that I think that is going to be an issue for him. I'm just interested to see, because that's when you learn whether or not this is legit.
Yeah, and I also like to see him against some lefties too, because that's something he struggled with in the past. But it's going to be, I'm interested to see what they do with him this season. There's obviously some other factors at play, but he's definitely interesting with the bat. And if they wanted to go with more of a bat first option off the bench, he definitely has that over Rouse. Obviously, Rouse has some other things that he doesn't have, but
does he though? It's not like Fitzgerald's a butcher. Like he can field short.
There's some other things.
Yeah, I mean, Aruz, yeah. I mean, Aruz is up. They're comfortable with him now, and I think they're comfortable.
And I think it's like he's got the speed. Aruz has the speed advantage. He's like the base running is better. Like
yeah,
they're little things like that I think kind of like separate. And he's on the 40 man. That's the other thing is the biggest thing is that they would lose Aruz if to get Fitzgerald on.
Yeah, and Cora said today that there just aren't a whole lot of at bats for Aruz right now, and I think
that's why you keep him up because you don't care if he doesn't hit.
Fitzgerald can play.
Exactly, you don't care. So
right. Pitching side of the ball, Ian, a very interesting pitching staff. We mentioned Darwinzon's there, but you've got ranked guys in Connor Siebold and Josh Winkowski in the rotation. In the bullpen, you had Bizardo, and maybe he comes back. You've got Durbin Feltman there, Zach Kelly, a couple of other interesting guys. Caleb Ort's there, a few other guys who were signed as minor league free agents, Taylor Cole, Michael Feliz. Interesting, no Frank German, which I think is just a depth thing, because I think German showed he's ready for AAA.
Yeah, I think it's a depth thing too.
It's a numbers game.
There's just too many arms, and I think they wanted to keep around more of those like minor league depth guys for AAA.
And look, Danish and Michael Feliz both have opt-outs in their contracts. So I think that's just part of like keep as much depth as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Danish has a 26-man opt-out. I want to say June 1 and July 1.
That makes sense. But I
want to say Feliz has 26-man opt-outs on May 15 and June 15 or July 15.
I also think though with someone like with German too, if you look at it, like he threw 8 innings in relief in Double A, it's not the end of the world if he starts back there. I know he threw more because he started, but as a full-time reliever, he's only thrown 8 innings. So
exactly,
yeah.
it was once they did, it's like okay, yeah, because we were looking at right now Worcester has 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 active relievers, not counting Kyle Hart as a piggyback starter and not counting Tyler Danish, who's staying up with the major league team on the taxi squad, at least while they're in New York.
Yeah,
which makes sense. Why send him to Jacksonville? He's going to get there tomorrow. He might pitch once
because he was already with the Red Sox. So
he can keep him in New York.
Throw a bullpen there, like it's fine.
Keep him in New York and say, hey, just go to Worcester next week. Don't bother going down to Jacksonville. That makes sense.
Agree.
So they've got 9 active. At one point, we had like 13 projected relievers.
Yeah, I mean they have a lot of like somewhat interesting guys. They're very right-handed at that level, obvioally.
Not as right-handed as they're going to get lower in the system. But.
Fair. We will get into that, but yeah, no, it's an interesting group, and I agree with you that I think there are definitely guys who can help the Red Sox, both as like short-term replacements and also more in like longer-term roles.
For sure. Let's move down to Portland, Ian, where the Portland Sea Dogs open up on the 8th, and I think the highlight here is the pitching staff. So let's stay with pitching. The pitching staff is led. The rotation has 4 guys that are in our top 15. Right now, in Brian Bayo, Jay Groom, Chris Murphy, and Brandon Walter, and then Victor Santos, the likely number 5 starter, also ranked. Then you move to the bullpen, and you've got ranked guys in Frank German, Chase Shugart, Jacob Wallace. AJ Politi is a guy I like. Dylan Spake is an interesting guy. Even like a lefty like Brendan Nail is kind of interesting. Adonier Mosqueda. It's a very deep pitching staff that I thought, as much as I want to save for the end, what's the best pitching staff? What's the best, I think it's clearly the best pitching staff of each of the affiliates.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, go
ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I got a question today about, how does this rank compared to past affiliates? And it's like, look, I don't think it's like a mind-blowingly good pitching staff.
And he's got 3 of the top 10 guys in the system.
But so relative to the Red Sox system, it's probably the best pitching staff we've actually gotten to see since the 2014-15 Pawtucket Red Sox, where those teams had, Eduardo Rodriguez, Henry Owens, Brian Johnson, Matt Barnes, Brendan Workman. In 14, it had Alan Webster, Ruby De La Rosa, I think maybe even Anthony Renato, those teams. The 2020 Greenville Drive were shaping up to have a really good pitching staff as well, but obviously they didn't have a season, so we don't really know. But that said, yeah, this staff might be the best since that time of any affiliate they've had, at least to start the year.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think the thing that for me that stands out is it's not just the starters. There's actually interesting relievers too.
exactly. That's the difference. Yep.
It's one of those things where if I'm going to a game, I'll feel comfortable that I'm going to get someone that I want to see. Whereas like there are other staffs and other
Multiple
years,
guys.
especially. Yeah. Well, exactly. But like there's usually, there'll be days where I'll just be like, there's not a single pitcher pitching today that I need to see.
Yep.
Whereas like with this team, there's going to be someone interesting throwing every day, which is nice to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the flip side, though, the lineup is by far the weakest of the 4 affiliates in the system.
Yeah. I mean, prospect wise, it's kind of interesting, how they're going to make this work. I mean, granted, there's 5 guys who are ranked. Probably they're led by Christian Coss, who's going to be the primary shortstop, one would assume. And David Hamilton, one of the returns for in the JBJ Hunter Renfroe trade. Brandon Howlett there also, who we're hearing might work some in the outfield as well this year. Cameron Cannon, Hudson Potts, who cleared waivers, was ranked, but cleared. And then Cole Cottom at catcher, but the outfield, I kind of like Dizzy Wilson as a minor league free agent. He looks the part. I want to see what he can do. But honestly, that, we didn't mention any of the guys in the IL, obviously Worcester, dollar on the cookie jar. Brian Mata's obviously on the IL there, as is Caleb Simpson is out with the same thing that kept him out at the end of last year, Dan Altavilla. At this level, it's interesting because Devlin Granberg is on the IL to start. He would no doubt be starting in the outfield for this team, as might Pedro Castellanos get a lot of run out there. This is just a very, the infield's got some guys at kind of the second, third short, but beyond that, the lineup is kind of meh to me.
I would agree with that. And I think, what you're saying about it does have 5 guys ranked. I'm pretty sure 3 of them are like in the 50 to 60 range.
Oh yeah. That's Cottom. That's Howlett's probably in the 40s. I think, not looking at it. And who else? Cannon is in that 40s range, I think.
Yeah. Cannon's 49 and Howlett's 43. I mean, I know I had them lower, but yeah, that's like, there, that's what you're looking at. There's really, the top prospects of the 2 middle infielders, as you said. And I think it's the rest of the team. It's a lot of guys who are trying to regain their prospect value after they've just really, struggled for a variety of reasons, or just not shown the kind of tools the Red Sox expected them to have or developed the way they expected them to. Or
endeared in a guy who needs to prove it after having a pretty good year last year, power wise, but he just needs to show it wasn't just,
it's just tough though. Cause yeah, it's tough with him just because of the defensive profile. It's just left field only, not a lot. He's not going to have there. Yeah, well, that also
last year.
But I mean, it's still like a team that'll be that is definitely interesting at the plate. I would like to see Hamilton. I liked Coss a lot last year. Someone I kind of talked up.
Good. I like Wait For It. That's my favorite song from it.
So yeah,
sorry,
I have no idea what that reference was.
It's a Hamilton joke.
Oh yeah, okay.
If you give me the opening to make that joke, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna take my shot.
Sure. I'm gonna guess like what percentage of our listening audience do you think is gonna get that
Hamilton?
reference?
Oh, a bunch. No question. Tweet us whether you get the Hamilton reference.
That's the play, right? It's not a movie, or is it a movie also?
Well, they made a movie out of it. It's on Disney Plus.
Okay. No, I was just because I made a reference to someone recently that was a movie reference, and someone literally responded like, "I didn't realize you watched movies." And I was like, "No,
I wasn't me during camp."
No, it wasn't you. And I was like, "I watch movies. I just don't watch movies that Chris watches."
Yeah. Fair. All right, Greenville, 30-man roster, made a lot more interesting with recent news, which I was very happy about, but. I guess we'll stay with the lineup because that's these next 2 teams. The lineup is where the action is. Love this lineup obviously highlighted by Nick York at second base, but you've also got Cedon Rafaela, Matthew Lugo, Alex Benelis, Tyler McDonough, Gilberto Jimenez. And then, some other guys who are ranked like Nick Decker, Steven Scott is going to be the primary catcher, apparently. I really like this lineup. And then, of course, Big Joe Davis. How could I not mention him? I mean, I guess I've already mentioned him on the show once, but, on a given night, you're potentially going to see a lineup of 8 out of 9 guys who are ranked in our top 60.
Yeah, it's a very deep lineup. It's a fun lineup. I think it has a really interesting mix. Like, you've got 3 center fielders playing the outfield. to the point where like Tyler McDonough is a very good defensive center fielder, and he's playing left field.
He's probably going to primarily be playing left field. I mean, he'll play center field when Rafael is not there.
And it's fair because Rafael is going to play infield also. So, but the thing is, I completely agree with you because Rafael is better than him. Rafael is like legit center field. That's, he's probably the best defender in the organization. I'm trying to think if there's any.
Hearing they're also going to get him time at shortstop this year more so than previously. I mean, he's the only other shortstop on the roster unless they get McDonough some run there. But,
yeah, I mean, because I know McDonough took some ground balls there, but I think the issue is they just have too many shortstops between those two teams that there's not enough to get him game reps. So I think it will be Rafaela and Lugo getting those. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it's a team full of guys that I'm very interested to see. I think that like York is someone who, if he hits well, he's not going to be there very long. I think he'll be up pretty, if he hits for 6 weeks, he'll be up in Portland by May. Jim Callis, I think, predicted he's going to hit like 358 this year. If he's going to do that, he's going to be up in Portland, pretty shortly into the season. So,
yeah, no question.
Yeah. I mean, and you do, if you take out his the thing that's crazy is I don't think that's crazy, if that makes sense. Like
no, he could. I mean, he finished last year there. He got,
if you take out his first month, he hit 365 last year. I think it was, or 363. If he
comes out hitting like that again, then that's definitely within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Then it's like, but the problem is then, and it's not, I mean, look, you're not going to have this be what keeps you from promoting Nick York, but in the middle infield in Portland, you've got Hamilton, Coss, and Cannon.
Well, but I mean,
Cannon can get run at third base, but you've also got Potts and Howlett getting run at third base. And again, none of this is going to keep you from promoting Nick York.
And I also would not be surprised at all to hear that Hamilton is getting some time in center field eventually.
Yeah, that's true.
With his
Duran plan.
Yeah, with his athleticism, I would not be surprised at all.
That's true.
But I think though, as you said, like there's with pretty much every player, there's like some sort of storyline that's going to be interesting to follow. And I think that's rare, is that, you have such a deep roster top to bottom at the plate where, Steven Scott, how is the conversion to catcher going? Joe Davis. Nick York, what does the defense look like? What's the power looking like? Things like that, because we know it can hit. Benelis, like, what does Benelis look like? We haven't seen him. Lugo, was that end of the season run of his real? If he focused on hitting for hard contact rather than power, does that stick? Et cetera. So yeah, and then I mean, that doesn't even mention, we've kind of buried the lead, like Gilberto Jimenez, who's I'm sure maybe we'll save that discussion for the rankings, but he's another guy who I'm very interested to see.
Yeah. And then on the pitching side, obviously a little bit weaker. 3 ranked starting pitchers in Wyatt Olds, Shane Drohan, and Shi Jung Liu. Olds, I'll talk about it more later, but it was kind of my favorite guy that I saw pitching in camp. Small sample, admittedly. Like, I didn't see a whole ton of guys. I saw 3 days worth of games basically, but good to see him make it all the way to Greenville in his first full season. And I think it's right. I mean, I think that's the appropriate assignment based on what we saw. Bullpen, you've got Brendan Celuchi there, who's interesting. That whole crew of bullpen guys from Salem last year who had awesome numbers, but were very old. It's like, okay, now you're in Greenville. You got to do it again. And if you do it again, you'll get promoted to Portland, where you're going to have to keep doing it, but we'll see what they can do. Possibly more interesting there is the injured list. Jeremy Wu Yellen starting the year on the injured list. He wasn't pitching when we were down in Fort Myers. He seems to be maybe a month-ish behind.
Yeah, 3 weeks to a month, I would say.
Yeah, so we'll hear what the deal is there. But we'll see how that works out for him. When he's back and ready. Grant Gambrell also going to start the year on the IL, a guy who would be starting there as well. So, we'll have to see how that rotation shakes out over the course of the year with the guys who are on the IL.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thinner pitching staff than obviously Portland, which obvious, but it looks worse than it is, I think, because of those injuries.
Yeah,
and I still think there are definitely some, things to watch, and there are certain guys I'm interested in. I definitely did not think I'd be saying that I think Wyatt Olds might be the best pitcher on the pitching staff, but that's kind of where I am right now.
That's where I am. No question.
But like at the same time, I'm interested to see what Lou looks like, see if maybe kind of like pared down his pitch mix and focusing more on 3 or 4 rather than 6 or 7 pitches, and kind of see if that helps him. Shane Drohan, can the velo come at all? He's someone maybe we'll get into the rankings, but it's tough to be that type of pitcher at 88 to 90 versus, if he with a good breaking ball. Same thing with Jorge Rodriguez falls in the same camp, frankly. Can you get away with 90 to 92, as a ghost ball? That? Yeah, I was like 88 to 92.
He hit 91.
He hit like 92 once or twice, but
okay.
But yeah, there's just a lot of guys like that. And then it's interesting that the starting rotation just doesn't have much velocity. Whereas I think if you look at some of the other affiliates, that's kind of like the best part of it. You look at Portland, Bayo throws really hard. Chris Murphy can run it up there. Yeah, Walter can even run it up there. Right. But then you go into Salem, Wilkelman throws hard. Yeah. Senna throws hard. Bizardo throws hard. Jackson throws hard.
Ruberstein throws hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Uberson's 92 to 94. And then you go to Greenville and it's low 90s, 88 to 90, 95 to 97, low 90s, 88 to 92. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that staff does. But I actually think the bullpen will be good because it's a bunch of guys who know how to pitch and they're like professional pitchers. They're going to work quickly.
Very
they're going to get out.
Guys.
Exactly.
Very good work guys in a way that I'm not using that as a pejorative.
No, it's a lot of guys who will play minor league baseball for a long time and might get a cup of coffee if they just keep shoving the entire way up. Mm-hmm. Guys like Casey Cobb, Jordan DiValerio. It's all guys scouts love those type of pitchers because they keep the game going. They throw strikes. And they also give you a good look for the other hitters if you're scouting the other team because they actually know how to pitch. It's not just like an A-ball arm strength guy who, if a hitter can just make contact, it's going to go a long way. These guys know how to pitch. They know how to spin a breaking ball. They know how to locate a changeup. It's good stuff. So it's interesting. It's a fine group. It's not exemplary, but I think it's solid.
It's interesting that Lou Olds and Moo Yelland are 38, 39, 40 in our rankings. And they're all going to be in the rotation together at some point. And I think that's about right. And then looking at the final roster, Ian, going down to Salem, again, the highlight here is the position players. This another lineup where in theory you could have here's the problem is that they've got 5 infielders ranked in our top 60, which I guess one of them DHs, 2 outfielders. So it's another lineup where you can have 8 guys ranked on a given night. Obviously highlighted by shortstop Marcelo Meyer making his full season debut, buttressed by Blaze Jordan, Briner Bonasi, Edinson Paulino, Nico Cavadas in the infield. Eduardo Vaughn and Miguel Lugetto are in the outfield, and actually, in theory, will be joined by a 9th hitting prospect ranked in the top 60 in Eduardo Lopez once he ramps up. He had just started playing again after an injury when we were down there, so he's a few weeks behind. And then Nathan Hickey, a catcher. It's a good group. Even the other infielders and Tyler Miller and Carson Seamus, I almost feel if they were starting, I would be okay with it on an affiliate. That wouldn't be a hole. That would be something I'm
and
with.
You're not alone on that. That's something other teams have expressed to me. If we had this guy, he would start for us on our low A team. That's not
no question.
That's not just Chris talking. That's legitimately something that people talk about.
So, it's going to be interesting to see how that playing time breaks down. Obviously, Meyer's going to get as much time at shortstop as
I think that's the one exception is that Meyer will play only shortstop and he's going to play it, 5 or 6 days a week.
Yes. No
other than that, I think we'll see Blaze Jordan play some first base. You'll see Cavadas DH. We'll see Bonasi play some third base. We'll see Paulinho play maybe outfield and in addition to infield. Because I do think it'll be interesting too. I'm wondering, as you said, Simus will get some time at shortstop. I wonder maybe if he'll get some time in the outfield too. Tyler Miller can play first and third. I kind of like his bat. I think the outfield is definitely weaker than the infield, obviously, which
but again, once you get Lopez there too,
but that's what I was about to say. Once you get Lopez there,
31 on our rankings, right there.
Lopez is someone that I think gets slept on just because he missed so much time with injury, but he was someone who scouts really liked it extended. He was good enough there that they promoted him to Salem. He just got hurt. And, that's there's nothing you can do about that, injuries happen. So I think he's someone who's kind of getting slept on this year. And someone who could, if he stays healthy, might be a breakout candidate. But yeah, no, it's a very exciting position. And the pitching staff is, I think
it's okay.
It's a wild. I think it's a wild card. I have no idea what to expect from this pitching staff.
Yeah, when you look at it, 5 ranked players in Nathaniel Cruz, Wilkelman Gonzalez, Rita Senna, Tyler Ruberstein, and Jacob Webb, guys there that we will talk about in the rankings part of this. But what is the rotation even going to be? Because you've got 8-ish guys there. I mean, maybe not Pinero. So maybe let's say 7 guys I could see being in the rotation.
Yeah.
Add in Juan Encarnacion, Angel Bastardo, Gabriel Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going to work? And then the bullpen, I mean, Webb, we were talking a little bit about Johnny Felix earlier. Like he was
solid enough. It's I mean, I didn't mention, I mentioned him. See, this is shout out to the Patreon game updates. He's someone I talked about on those when I saw down there, but we just didn't have time to talk about it on this podcast. But yeah that's the kind of detail we go into on those is you get Johnny Felix updates.
And who knows what kind of like reinforcements they might get with interesting guys, I mean, there's, no one who jumps out at me, but like Luis De La Rosa didn't make it. Does he take that to heart and start to shove in extended spring training and get up there and get interesting again? I don't know. Who knows? They'll eventually get buttressed potentially by draft picks. Who knows? If they draft pitchers early, I could see him going right to Salem. So again, that's I think there's going to be a lot of movement in that rotation. Wilkelman was a guy who got a fair amount of run in Salem last year. Wilkelman made he made 4 starts there, so that's about a month. So I could see him, if he's pitching well, getting a later end of mid-year bump up to Greenville if he's pitching well. Who knows? But if he spends the whole season in Salem, that's probably fine too. So we'll see. We'll see how these wind up working out. An interesting roster. What was the biggest surprise to you, Ian, on where guys were assigned between the various levels?
I don't really think there was one. I think it kind of
jumps at you.
No, I think it kind of played out as expected.
Let me put on your before I went to spring training hat. Would that change it at all?
No, I don't really think so. I mean,
probably. I don't have anything in mind. I'm just saying, when we're down there, we see guys. It's like, oh, like
I guess would be like Senna making Greenville, because I'll be honest, Salem. Salem. I had heard of him, but he was not someone that was on my radar at all.
Yeah.
Like maybe something like that, but even that's like a minor thing.
Yeah. I figured he would, because he was one of the guys, there was a group of guys that they were working in and out of the rotation last year at that level. Bastardo was another one, but then, guys like De La Rosa and Henry Nunez, who didn't make the team, were as well. But the only somewhat surprise to me was probably German to Portland. I really thought he was going to go to Worcester. But that said, I also get it. Maybe Michael Getty's making it to Greenville in his first full season as a pitcher. But again, who knows? We like you said, he apparently looked pretty good when you saw him. So anyway, yeah, those are the rosters. If you got further questions about them, again, hit us up, podcast@soxprospects.com. And I guess, Ian, let's move on now to rankings. Our new rankings came out it was Tuesday, I believe, Ian, the same day that rosters came out, which made for a very non-productive day for me at work. But at any rate, we put our new rankings out. A lot of movement, and I think we should probably mention up front, Ian, this kind of came in part out of our conversation with Alex Spear over the offseason, where he talked about tearing it up and starting over. And I know, at least for me, the process was a little painful starting from scratch when you're doing a list of 60. But I think it did lead to, there were some guys who I would look at my rankings and say, well, I don't want to move him down or up, so he should more or less stay about the same. But then in the process of doing, mentally, we're like, okay, let's all concentrate on just rip it up and start over. Don't feel beholden to what you've done before. There were guys who moved more than they probably would have otherwise. I think. I don't know if that's something that you agree with or felt when you did it, or how that process changed for you at all this time around. But was there anything that kind of in this process was different for you than in the past, or not even in the past, but just maybe special to a season opening ranking?
Not really, honestly. I think I kind of approach it how I usually do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I didn't really like rip up my entire rankings, more that like in a sense, but I think that I definitely approached it with more of like a blank slate look.
Open mind, maybe.
But I also think that there are certain guys that like I feel confident in how I rank them already that I wasn't going to move them or I was like, I felt, what I expected is what I saw, and it kind of reinforced my opinion of them. There weren't that many guys that were like, oh, I'm way off on, being out on a limb here with them, that I need to change that. So I feel pretty good about where mine ended up, and then kind of where we ended up as a site.
Yeah, no, I think I felt really good about where the rankings wound up as well. And I guess the way we'll go through this, I mean, look, Tristan Casas, Marcelo Meyer, Nick York, 1, 2, 3. We talked about them last episode. That is what it is. Jaron Duran at 4, no surprise. And then I'm not going to read off every name. That's going to make for terrible audio, but we're just going to hit on
just briefly at the top though. I think it's worth that. Yeah. For me, it's a 1A, 1B. Like, I think Casas and Meyer are very, very close. And York is like a 1.5 C. Like, he's not on that same tier as them to me, but he's also close. Not like a full tier below.
And worth mentioning, we changed his grade from a projection of a 5 to a 5.5.
Yeah, I mean,
that's on York, the same tier as Meyer and Casas.
Like, I'm gonna be rewriting like reports based on what I saw, and also like talking to scouts who saw the Red Sox for a while during spring training, and obviously just off certain guys. And like, York is one I'm strongly considering like bumping his hit tool grade from plus to something higher. Like, that's how confident I feel in him.
I feel like he's a plus to better.
Yeah,
like that's the way you put it. It's like, it's probably plus. It might.
But the thing is, we kind of talked about last week, the thing that separates those other guys is like Casas has the power and Meyer has the shortstop aspect. York right now is his hit tool is his best trait, but the defense, but the defense lags behind a little bit. He doesn't have the same power as those other guys. Like, that's what keeps him in that third spot, like, clearly to me.
Yeah. Did you have any temptation to put Meyer 1? Because I have to admit that I
thought about it, but I think the biggest thing, and I've talked about, is I value proximity in this discussion. I think that
exactly.
I think Casas can be up this year. I would not be surprised at all if he's up by like July for this season. And I think that matters. The end of the day, the goal is to win games at the major league level. And I think Tristan Casas helps you do that sooner than Marcelo Meyer does. And if you're going to have two comparable players with similar ceilings, like, obviously the way they get there is very different. I'm going to take the guy who I think is going to help me win sooner.
Yep. I mean, with Meyer, there's almost like he can do everything pretty well, like damn well, even, except maybe run. He's not a burner. I'd almost feel better if there was some kind of like uncanny hit to it, but he can hit. I don't know. I like talked myself in and out of it a lot. But I guess
if the person who has the best single tool out of those two is Casas with his power, like,
agreed.
Myers just a bunch
of way to put it.
Myers a bunch of 55s and 60s,
which is great.
Obviously,
it's awesome.
Casas is with the two most important things at first base is there's potential for like 55 and 70. Like, that's a lot, even though it's first base, which is why it's close.
Yeah. I mean, I find it very hard to think Tristan Casas is not going to play a good amount of Major League Baseball. I find it hard to think that about Meyer as well, but I see more of a chance that it
but there's just more risk, something can go wrong. We've seen it go wrong with top guys. He's still 4 years away.
No question. In the top 10, fair amount of movement. You see a little bit of movement as you start to get past Duran. And then, you see guys who've fallen a lot and you see guys who've risen a lot. Let's actually start, Ian, with the guy who fell from 5 to 13 in Jeter Downs. I was tempted to put him even lower in my list based on what we saw. What I'm seeing early.
Downs is someone who
help.
Yeah. Downs is someone who, after, we get some looks this month and kind of just get some feedback, and I've already started getting feedback. It's not good. I could see him falling pretty quickly further down the list, because this would be now 2 years of not hitting at all.
Yeah. And he didn't look great at the 2020 alt site either. He looked
nothing stood out. It was fine, but nothing stood out really.
And it was also just weird. Like, we didn't know what to make of it.
The thing is, like, we kind of gave him a pass last season for that reason too, that it was coming off a weird year, which is understandable. Now we're approaching like this is kind of like a trend. Like, this is, this would be, as I said, like, this is year 2 of it. And if he's not going to have it figured out, like, there's nothing we can do, but we have to drop him, because what is he then? You know what I mean? Like, if he can't hit, it's not a good enough glove to carry yourself to the major league level on that alone. So yeah, it's a tough one. And as you said, I thought really hard about pushing him lower than I had him.
The other guy who fell out of the top 10 Ian was Gilberto Jimenez, who fell from 9 to 18.
And it's the same thing with him.
It's the same thing. And
but the difference is Jimenez still puts up good numbers.
Well, he does, but so they've got him more upright from the left side.
But he still doesn't do it in game consistently though.
Really? Games, I saw him upright in games whenever I looked.
No, some of them he was, but I saw some at bats where he's more just slapping at the ball again.
And well, the thing to me is it's like, so Jimenez learned to hit left-handed after signing, right? And when he was doing the crouch and slap and go, it looked like a slap and go swing. Upright, he looks like he's still learning how to hit left-handed to me. That's the problem. It still doesn't look natural when he takes a normal swing.
No, but then you see his right-handed swing and it's still like, it's a good swing, but he just doesn't get enough reps from that side. So it's like, then that's why I think he struggles.
Should he give up switch hitting?
I don't hate it, honestly. I don't think we're there yet, but I would
now that he's not an 80 runner anymore.
I would not be surprised at all if that's something that they propose at some point. Yeah.
If he's at mid-season and he's hitting, even if he's hitting,
but the thing is, I'm not going to care with the average.
Power.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm going to be looking at the slugging.
Let me finish the statement.
Yeah.
Even if he's hitting 280 with no power, I almost said 300 with no power, but I think 300, you got to let him. Maybe not even. I don't care what the average is. If he's still not hitting for any power, you're just look, try taking some at bats against right-handers from the right side. We'll see how it goes.
And you saw him up close. He's not small. He's built like a college.
It's not Moncada.
No, but he's built like a college safety. He's built like a safety. It's like
he's not a linebacker. He's safety. I like that.
He's got thick legs. He's got like legit muscles. And he's still pretty fast. It's still 65, 70 runner. But it's just he just doesn't hit the ball with authority from the left side, and that's and even watching him take BP, he just doesn't look that comfortable from the left side at all.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And I also think it's noteworthy. His defense has regressed significantly.
It's not great. I mean, he's going to play.
I don't think he's a center fielder anymore. He's
going to play center field in Greenville, but I mean, he's not. He's going to play center and right. I'm
saying Raphael is going to start.
He's going to play some center field. Let me rephrase.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
He's going to play some center field is what I meant. But yeah, he's definitely not going to be there. He's not going to play center field 4 times a week.
No. And that's the thing is if you're not playing center field that much at the low minors, how can I project you to be a major league center fielder? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep. No, 100%. Looking at the guys who moved into the top 10 and we'll try and pick this up a little quicker to get through the whole rankings, but, moving up to number 8, Miguel Bliss. We talked a lot about him last week. He's up from 15 to 8. I like the ceiling. I like what I saw. Still extremely raw. I still got a 2 floor, and I think that's fine.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing is that we thought about putting him higher, but and this is something I kind of I elicited some feedback from some people in the game and it was kind of universal that it's super exciting. There's it's a potential 5-tool guy. We can just put it out there. You'll see in the scouting report, there's 5 potential 50 or higher tools there.
I get keyword is potential 5th.
Yeah, you can make a case for putting him 4th, I think.
Yeah.
But can we see it a little bit first? If he played what, 18 games last year, 20 games in the DSL. The feedback was let him prove it stateside, and then you can strap the rocket ship to him. And I think that's kind of, and that's where we ended up. And I'm happy with where he is because. If we're going to talk about proximity with Mayer, we have to talk about it with him. He's super raw. It's, it's very raw. There's a wide variance of outcomes here, but he's a super exciting guy. And if you ask me who has the highest ceiling of any Latin American player in the system, it's him, and it's not close. He's the highest ceiling guy.
Yeah. He's the only 7 ceiling we've got outside the top 3.
Yeah, exactly. So he's the ceiling guy, but it's just, we need to see it.
Mm-hmm. And then Brandon Walter moved up from 17 to 90 and talking a little bit about that. Part of that for me was just, part of the tearing it up process, but it was just also what we've been hearing and seeing on him.
Yeah. And I think the thing is that there are people who think he can start, and that to me is a big deal. I think the stuff is very interesting. It's funky. Don't get me wrong. It's a very unique arm slot. You don't see it very often, but the stuff is good. And there are people who think it will work as a starter. And, when you cut down to it, those guys in that next tier, a lot have big question marks about whether they're starters or not. I think Walter has fewer question marks, and I think he's got a better chance to be up sooner. And I think that, that combination for him pushed him towards the top 10 for me.
Yep. In the 10 to 20 or the 11 to 20 range, two guys I want to discuss really quick, Ian. Cutter Crawford, who we didn't even really talk about, making the major league team. And I think he's going to have a real bullpen role, like you said. Rose from 27 to 16.
I mean, his stuff looked great at spring training. Like,
he looked really
he was
good.
like 96 to 97.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw when Eck was talking about it, he pitched in like the game that they played all the kids in, which was awesome to watch, by the way. Well, maybe we can talk about that a little bit at the end, but watching like Miguel Bliss hit against a major league pitcher was hilarious.
Right.
They scored like 8 runs off. It was great.
Abram Liendo.
Oh, I love Abram Liendo. Don't get me started. He's someone who I wanted to put it. I think I have him in my top 60. I wish he was.
You gotta wait till the next version when he's super Liendo.
Did you see he homered off Rich Hill, by the way? Did you see that?
Yeah, you
in like a sim game. Yeah,
you sent that to me. Anyway, Cutter Crawford.
Yeah, sorry, Crawford.
Sure.
Eck was talking about it. His delivery, you can see why he's not a starter. His delivery is
it's like short arms.
Yeah, it's such a short arm. Then this is why we've always pegged him as a reliever.
Yes,
but it's so off-putting. Like, it's so jerky and funky that it is really tough. And when you're throwing 96, 97 from that short arm with a split and a curveball, like, it's a legit bullpen piece. And
split now.
Yeah, I like a split change. It's either a change or a split.
Is the cutter gone?
He didn't. The inning I watched, I don't think he threw a cutter, but he also might have just not been throwing it. Like,
true.
He's thrown a changeup before, but it was just like a show me pitch. He threw a couple good ones in the outing there.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, like, he's an important piece to them because with Houck in the rotation, I think they needed another righty to be like a multi-inning bridge guy.
Give them length. Yeah,
and
no question.
I think Crawford could do that if he's good, like, be a very integral part of this bullpen this season. And that's, even though I think he's a reliever, that's why he got pushed off for me, is I think he's someone who will help them this year. And I'm going to take that multi-inning relief guy over like the single inning relievers. And that's why I was comfortable putting him inside my top 20, whereas I don't have any single inning relievers in my top 30.
The other guy I wanted to mention really quick is Chris Murphy. Just because of the variance we had, you were the lowest on him out of us at 20. I had him at 13.
Yeah.
And the difference, I mean, and we've talked a lot in the past, so we don't need to necessarily get into the specifics of the splits and all of that, but maybe just very briefly on what you think of him, and I'll kind of give my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So I had him below Crawford, and the reason was I don't think Chris Murphy can start. I think he's a reliever. He might be a multi-inning reliever, but I think that his inability to get right-handed hitters out is potentially like a major issue for his development. And I'm not sure there's a fix to it. And if he can't get righties out, he can't, he's not going to be that. He's a 1-inning reliever at best then. And so that's just the concerns with me there are what kind of holds him back. And I also don't see a plus pitch. I think it's more like, it's solid average, above average stuff. So I think that kept him behind Crawford for me and kind of just at 20 versus higher. Yeah,
that's fair. I mean, the thing with Murphy for me, I hear all that and I don't discount it at all. That's a great point. To me, I want to see this year. The thing with lefty righty splits in the minors is it's hard to then dice those up and see, like, when is he having those problems? He was more homer prone in Greenville than he was in Portland. And to me, the fact that he was able to throw some gems in Portland last year against right-handed hitting heavy lineups, it makes me wonder, how much of that split was earlier the year, how much of it was later. He apparently might be the opening night starter for Portland. So we'll see how that goes. And that makes sense because they usually do it with a guy who had been there the prior year.
Yeah, that's not
surprising at all. It doesn't mean a whole lot. But, with Murphy, I before I go completely in that direction, I want to see what it looks like this year as well. Does he improve on those splits? Can he improve the command? I'm not saying I think there's a ton of reliever risk. I'm with you there. I mean, look, I've got him ranked around with like Connor Siebold and like who are the pitchers there. I mean, Ward's a Tommy John guy, but Josh Winkowski, who I've got higher than that, there's a ton of reliever risk. So I think in that range, all of those guys have reliever risk.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think though that what separates those other guys, and I think Winkowski's a fair, is that Winkowski has his stuff is just better than Murphy's, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep. And I have him higher too. But
I guess
great point.
Yeah, I guess the guy we should, and like Wilcom and Gonzalez, the same thing. There's like significant reliever risk. We talked about it last week, but his stuff is just much better. And then I like Seabold is the one wild card here, and maybe we should briefly touch on him just because he looked bad again tonight. And he was one who I had a lot of trouble ranking because it was something where I just have no idea what to do with him because
Jacqueline Hyde.
Yeah, like if the guy I saw last year
and like
the alt site
is
is like a top 7 prospect, he's better than I would have him ahead of Jay Groom because it's a guy who I know like he didn't use his changeup, which because we haven't, he didn't need it. He had a slider that was way better than I had seen in the past. And if he was like 93 to 95, the guy who was at the AFL last year and who, it seems like was tonight is not a top, like he's like a more fringe top 20 prospect in the system to me. So it's like he was tough to rank.
Yep. Other guys who moved around a lot, Ian, obviously a big jumper from 38 to 24 is Ryan Fitzgerald. Not just a spring training thing. That's just it's a, showing you can hit, showing you can do this in major league camp. Showing, we knew the versatility. I've liked him ever since I saw him in high A Salem. Maybe not where I have him ranked now, liked him. So I'm not going to say that I've been here on him the whole time, but, just moved a lot where he showed, there's a group of middle infield / utility types in that 19 to 26 range where we've got Ceddanne Rafaela at 19, Christian Coss at 22, Edinson Paulino 23, Fitzgerald 24, Brian Bonasi 25, David Hamilton 26, where, there's differences in like the hit tool and stuff like that. And maybe you can speak very quickly to that, but, I think he belonged in that group, which is why I thought it felt right to put him around that area.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of a trend. Something I just unintentionally, it ended up happening was the 20 to 30 range for me was a lot of like utility infield types.
Yeah, and then Mugo 29, I should mention too.
Yeah, and Fitzgerald, like as you said, he's the highest. Or did he end up the highest ranked? I think he did.
No,
second behind Coss.
Well, he's behind Fitzgerald. He's behind Paulino. He's behind Rafaela.
Oh, I'm looking. Yeah, I'm looking.
You're looking at last
list.
month. Yeah,
I am. But yeah, I mean, there's some variance with the hit tool. There's questions about him against lefties, but he's close to the big leagues. He can play a bunch of positions. He's got legit raw power. Like he has the most power of any of those guys. But I think for him, it's just the limiting thing is that his age, he's 28 now. I think he's 27 now.
Yeah.
Going to be 28 shortly. And I mean, the other guys, they kind of have, I think a little more upside than he does, but I mean, who knows? Fitzgerald could blow that up, if he continues to do what he's doing in Worcester and continues to show that, oh wait, maybe we have to treat him like an indie ball guy and, just ignore his prospect pedigree at all.
Yep.
But, I think that was a fair landing spot for him. And I think that group's going to be really interesting to follow as the season goes on.
Yep. The big faller in that group is Connor Wong at 27, down from 16. I think that was a little bit of a market correction, almost, at least for me. It felt like a little bit where I need to see him hit. I need to see him do something that makes him more than a future MLB backup to rank him higher than this.
Yeah, I feel like I've been kind of like the low man on him for a while.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's the reason. It's just, I don't like, if you're striking out a 30% rate at AAA, it's not going to work at the major league level with your hit tool. And if he's not going to hit, I think the defense is fine, but I'm not sure he would even hit at a level to be a backup. Like if he's a third catcher, is that a top, 30 prospect? I don't think it is. And I think that's the most likely outcome right now. If he shows some improvement with the contact skills, shows like better swing path, better swing decisions, better approach, then I definitely will reevaluate where I have him. But I think that right now, I just don't see anything more than like a third catcher for him.
I see him as a little bit more than that. And that's why I've got him higher. I think I see him more as like a potential, like I don't see him as a future starter. Like I saw on Twitter the other day, someone was like, well, he's the catcher starting next year. No, he's not, unless he does something very different this year. I think he's a guy I would be comfortable next year with them giving him some run as the backup catcher. Do I think he's going to do that for 10 years? Not necessarily. So that's why I think this is an appropriate spot. I have him ranked around where he is now. You had him ranked a little lower. I think James had him a little higher because he believed more in the bat based on the second half of last year, what he did in Worcester. Moving, I guess we forgot Christian Coss up from 31 to 22. You got anything you want to add quickly on Coss?
No, I mean, I think he's someone I was advocating for last year after I saw in Greenville. I was very impressed with him. I think he can legit play shortstop, which is the biggest thing. And I think that's what separates him For me, from like the guys at the lower levels, like Benassi, Paulinho, guys like that, I think that Coss can play a legit shortstop, and I think he's got the best like hit power combo of that group. It's not necessarily the best single tool with either of those grades, but when you put them together, I think he's got the best chance to be like, right. Hit it a little bit.
Shortstop.
Exactly.
Yep. In the next group, I think the big thing that catches your eye there is Zach Kelly, ranked at 37 after being unranked.
Yeah, I think
the Kelly guy. So you go.
Well, I think him and German kind of can be discussed together.
Yeah, because German's up from 52 to 35.
Yeah, and it's just I think both of them are like legit MLB potential bullpen pieces. With Kelly, I thought he was good in camp. He throws hard. He's got some decent secondaries. If he can stay healthy, I think he could be up this year. And German, I think, has the most upside of all of him and Jacob Wallace are the two. I think if you want someone who's like an internal option who I think could be a closer at some point for the Red Sox, those are the two names I would point to. And I think why I give German the slight edge, and you're going to say Brian Bayo.
No, I'm going to jump in and say really quick, like you're not saying that's what's going to happen.
No. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm saying that if best case scenario, could I see them pitching late inning roles? Yes, the stuff is that good for both of them. But obviously that's not the most likely outcome. Most likely outcome is they're middle relievers. The most likely outcome is they're like up and down fringy or don't even make the majors. But like if they make the majors, right. But I just think that, with German, with Kelly, and with Wallace, you have three guys who all are like, high minors now. Stuff is very legit. And now it's just, can you force your way to the big leagues? And I think they all have a chance to do that. But the reason they're not in the top 30 for me is that they're all one inning relief types. And unless you're a legit, like surefire closer, like Josh Hader type, or, like Josh Hader type,
Hader was a long inning guy too. Like,
I guess so,
2
fair.
or 3, right?
But you have to be like that type of stuff for me to put you like inside the top, 25, 30 for if you're a pure reliever. But
agreed.
They're both very interesting.
Yep.
Or they're all very interesting.
They are. The other guy I want to mention, because he kind of became my binky when we were down there, is Wyatt Olds, up from 58 to 39. We talked about the stuff last week. I'm highest on him out of anyone, but I just think even if it's in a relief role, it's a bowling ball sinker with a hard slider. We'll have to see how it plays. I may regret having him as high as I do. But I just really liked what I saw out of him, and I could see what they saw when they drafted him last year, and we're really excited about him, and we're talking about him. So that was a big jump. I don't know if you've got anything on Olds to add.
No, I mean, you're definitely, you're stealing my thunder. I was the one who was the highest on him last year.
You were. Well, you saw him, and I know.
I saw him. No, I know. But the reason I have him like right in that same area with those other relievers we were just talking about. And the thing for me is just he's a little farther away.
Yep. The next, the other guy we should mention, Eduardo Lopez, up from 40 to 31, 9 spots. I think that's just a matter of like us talking through it, frankly, because we saw very little of him. But
I think it was just a correction for like just get better communication on him.
Yeah, and talking with other scouts about him. And,
people still really like. He's got a lot of fans around the game. So
moving down, the next big jump was speaking of outfielders, Juan Chacon from 58 to 39, 19 spots. That one, I think, seeing him in person, to me, of that group of guys who moved up from the Dominican Summer League last year, save for Bliss, who's on his own kind of
Bliss is on another level compared to his own level.
But you've got the group that's Chacon, Joe Stinksy Garcia, John Frank Salazar. Because then you're getting the infielders as well. Luis Rivelo, Anderson Lira behind the plate. Chacon really looks the part to me. And Lira, we should mention, is up there at 32 up one.
I think catchers are a different animal though. Like
catchers, Lira, frankly, I'm leery of Lira to not.
Well, and this is a weird one. If he moves off catcher, I would drop him like significantly.
If he moves off catcher, and he's
big. Much bigger than I thought he was going to be.
He is pretty big.
He's but
Grown.
It's.
Grown,
it's not fat. Like it's not fat. It's just like it's a bigger frame than I expected because he's still athletic and I saw him catch twice. He moves well behind the plate. It's just he might like legit outgrow the position because he was 17 last year and now he's 18. And those guys, when you're that age, you still grow. Like that might be the issue.
Yeah,
exactly. So that might be the issue here.
I mean, to me, it's it's the physical, it's the, the kind of tools he showed out there. Again, he's still 41, but I that was just kind of the correction of like, okay, this is a guy we can move up a bit. It's not just like, oh, the numbers are good, but we need to see him. So on Chacon, I don't know if what your kind of thoughts were on seeing him at the backfields and moving him around.
He was very impressive when I saw him over at the Twins complex. He had a day where I think he had like a inside the park home run, a triple. Like he showed some pretty good tools. The thing with me, the one like hesitation I have is I don't really know if there's a carrying tool, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might just be a bunch of like 45s and 50s, which is a good prospect. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I need to see it to push him higher because nothing really like jumps out, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Two more guys I want to mention, Ian, a big jumper and a big faller. Tyler Ruberstein. Did we talk about him last episode?
I think we might have. There was more detail. Again, the Patreons, they got like
update.
An in-depth thing on. And I think
unranked
I
to 51. I don't know. Unranked to 51. Yeah, I think you did tweet about him too. But he was a guy we got buzz on before we got down there, and then we got down there and you got to see him, right? Or did you?
Yeah,
you saw him.
No, I did see him. And I liked what I saw. This is one where I was way higher than everyone else. I think I had him like 20 spots higher than anyone else or something. Maybe 10 spots. But I just think that it's a really fresh arm. It's a very unique story. I think he's someone who's going to maximize his talent and get the most out of it based on like the work ethic we've seen from him to turn himself from someone who didn't make his height, who literally was 70 to 75 when he entered college and pitched like 7 innings in his high school career to someone who by his junior year of high school. So 3 years later
of college,
junior year of college is, playing varsity at Northwestern's at it. So 3 years, he turned himself from 70 to 75 to like low 90s. I just think that kind of work ethic is tough to teach. And I think that he's someone who's going to maximize everything he does and really like focus on embrace the analytical side and work with that.
As a certain Red Sox podcaster would say, you can't teach that.
And I like this stuff. He was not, he's 90 to 94, little power sinker, good changeup, decent breaking ball. He could land it for strikes, like potential for 3 average pitches at least. He's going to start, for me, that was someone who belonged in like the 40-ish range. He ended up a little lower than that, but I think, which is fine. There's going to be disagreements. And
I just want to see it. I want to see it in A ball. Like I just want to see how it plays.
Oh, 100%. And that's why it's a collaborative process because it helps us kind of land at a better spot. Because
like
I didn't feel great about
like, let's just say it. You have him at 39. I have him at 51. I don't begrudge you those 12 spots.
Well, and that's the thing is
I get it.
And that's the same thing is I don't like, I completely understood why you guys had him where you did. But yeah, I just think there's a chance to start there. And the 3 pitch mix was intriguing enough that I put him ahead of some guys who are just like, kind of like the lottery ticket, lower minors guys. Mm-hmm. But you could also make a case for that. Like, those guys also are very interesting. So I think this is where it gets hard and it gets a lot of personal preference on like kind of like prospect archetypes that you prefer or that you've seen succeed. I think kind of the higher you get, the more straightforward it gets, but I think it got tough, but it also is a good thing it was tough because like there are guys I don't have in my top who I have ranked like 71 who I wanted to fit into my top 60.
Yeah. No, that's like, I had like even AJ Politi, a guy who's kind of boring because he's in AA. When I saw him, I was like, oh, that's a guy I think should probably be in top 60 guy. And then I did my list and he was at 67.
Exactly. And they're like, I'm looking at it right now. Like I have a guy, like I have Tyler Miller at 65. Like I like Tyler Miller. I think he's like at worst a solid or guy. Like, but I think there's a little bit of bat there, or like someone like Alan Castro. I both of them in the 70s and they're 60s or 70s, and I very easily could have ranked them in my top 60. So I think it's a good problem to have when you have that kind of depth. And I think a lot of it stems from what we talked about last week with that really strong DSL class coming over. There's a lot of interesting guys there that we saw in that game that I was talking about earlier.
Agreed. Yeah. And I guess we'll just do kind of lightning round on a few guys. We mentioned we would talk about Shane Drohan, dropped from 36 to 52. What was he, 90 to 92? I like the curveball a lot. It might be a plus curveball, but it's a 90 to 92 fastball that he doesn't know where it's going. That combination, this thing isn't going to do it, I don't think. Even if you move to the bullpen, like you can't be a one-pitch curveball guy in the bullpen. I mean, someone's going to say, well, Rich Hill. And he's a lefty too, which helps. And he's athletic, but like, it's almost like, I don't want to make the Trey Ball comparison, but it's like at some point athletic doesn't get it done anymore. You've got to see the stuff and the results. He had a pretty good year last year. I want to see how it looks in Greenville, but based on what I saw, I didn't think he belonged in that group I just mentioned of Olds, Wu Yelland, and Lou. So I don't know.
I mean, yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think that I can't find him now. Oh yeah, I was the lowest on of the group, and I think the concerns for me is that if the velocity and the control don't take a step forward, like what is he?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's a 2-pitch guy.
You made that point to me, and I was like, fair point. Like,
and I think that the other one for me when I was looking at it, it was like I was comparing him to someone like Jetix and Paez, who I think we talked about last week, and
he makes it his 60. He debuts.
Yeah. And so we'll talk about him now. Like Paez is 88 to 90 as I think he's 18-year-old with a plus breaking ball potentially also, and like a good changeup and way better control. And my thing was like, how can I have Drohan like 40 spots or not 40, like 10 spots ahead of this guy, or, 5 spots ahead of this guy who, if their pitch, their arsenals are pretty similar, the velocity is similar, and one of them is 4 years younger. And I think that's kind of where it was tough, is like when you don't have that fastball, even if you have a plus secondary, if the command isn't there, it's just not going to work. Most likely.
Mm-hmm. I did. Well, I think those 2 miles per hour are big, but that said, the command,
right. But it's also 4 years.
Up for it. And
yeah, but it's also 4 years.
You can project him perhaps.
Yeah.
Because he's already added some velocity.
He went from 84 to 86 to 88 to 90 in a year. So like that's a pretty substantial jump already.
Yep. Lightning round on guys who made it and fell out. Luis Rivelo, shortstop, going to be in the FCL, debuts at 53, can pick it.
Yeah, pick it. Nice left-handed swing, projectable frame. He's interesting. Might not be a shortstop just because of his size, but yeah, I liked what I saw.
Chase Shugart back into the rankings at 54. True bullpen guy now, going to be in Portland. I liked what I saw at him in the bullpen.
I liked it as a starter last year. Is up to 97 for me. I thought he was a reliever then. I'm interested to see if he can pare down the pitch mix and kind of it helps one of them develop into more of a plus pitch. Because I think that was the one concern I have is I don't know if there's a plus pitch there, but I like him in the bullpen, especially also his size. He was never going to start it. He's 5'10". Yeah. So we'll see. He's someone that I'm going to be hoping to get a look at early in the season to potentially, readjust once I see him live.
Right-handed reliever Jacob Webb debuts at number 56. I was just thinking of this, Ian. He's like pitching Tristan Casas.
I mean, he's massive. He's like 6'6", 260. Yeah, it's good stuff though. It's like power sinker, good slider, pure relief type, which is why he's where he is. He's at the back end of the 60, but it's just an interesting guy.
Rita Senna debuts at 57. We talked about him a little bit.
Yeah, he's big arm, big fastball. Doesn't really have any feel, doesn't really know how to pitch, but his changeup was actually decent, but very inconsistent. I mean, he threw like 230s and then the next one would be his 55, but arm strength guy, probably a reliever, but it'll be interesting to see how he does in his debut.
Miguel
in full season ball.
Sorry. Yep. Debut of full season. Well, no, he actually pitched in Salem last debut. Yeah. In full season
ball. Yes.
Or the full season. Because he had been at the level, but I get what you're saying. Miguel Lugetto debuts at 58, outfielder who was in the FCL last year. He's interesting. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like his swing really that much, but I mean, we'll see. Like he's got some tools, maybe.
Yeah. And then we talked about Paez, and then guys who fell out. Luis Perales from 45 fell out. Just the fact he could jump right back up there. I don't know. We've never, it's been 2 years. We haven't seen him and that's what it comes down to, and no one's seen him I've not talked to a single scout who's seen him. So it's like, we can't rank a guy if we have no information on him at this point. Luis De La Rosa falls out from 55. Didn't make Salem.
He was not good when I saw him. I think I don't think I talked about it last week. We talked about it on the Patreon thing, but his stuff is just, it's just not really that good. And I don't know what he is like, it's like 90 to 92 with fringy secondaries, not a lot of projection, kind of is what he is. He's very athletic. I'll give him that. But other than that, yeah.
Bradley Blaylock falls out from 37. I don't think we've mentioned this yet. Underwent Tommy John surgery, done for the year. That's probably just the start of next.
And that's why, it's just a TJ thing. Yeah. It sucks, but
yeah. And look, it's not automatic that you come back from it. We keep saying this, like a lot of guys do. We hope he does. And if he does and he pitches, he could bounce right back up, but it's not automatic.
And just to preempt the questions of why like Mata and Ward didn't have significant drops like that. it's the tier of prospect you are when you have it. When you're a top, 10, 15 prospect. Now, I wouldn't even say 15. If you're a top 10 prospect, you have Tommy John. You're going to get a longer leash. You're going to have. You're someone who like you'll be more willing to wait and see with them. When you're someone who's kind of like more in that middle tier, it's hard to justify keeping someone who's not going to pitch for a year over like keeping him ranked in the 40s over someone like Eduardo Vaughn or Brandon Howlett or Juan Chacon, someone like that. It's just tough.
Well, here's a way to explain it, right? In our rankings, we've got 355s. We've got no 50s. We've got 845s. And then everyone else that we've got a grade on, which is the top 30, they're all 40s or 4s, I guess, because we use the single digit. So yeah, that's it. When you get down to that level, you're talking 4s and 3.5s, like 3.5.
Yeah, outside of the top 30, it's like 35s, 40s.
And there's not a lot of distance between those players.
It's what we were talking. Fall more. It's what we were talking about. That the end of the rankings was hard because there's a lot of guys for these spots, and it's just like, am I going to take a guy who's going to play or a guy who's not going to pitch for 18 months? I'm going to be taking the guy who's playing right now.
Yep. Other guys who fell out, and we won't go into them, but Pedro Castellanos fell out from 57. Hudson Potts fell out from 53. Crank Gambrell fell out from 54. And the one guy we probably should have mentioned at the top is Noah Song. Noah Song, we made a conscious decision not to rank him this time around. The reason for that being that we have now not seen him pitch, we meaning everyone, since the fall of 2019. If he came back tomorrow, which he's not, as far as we know, and to be clear, this is not based on any inside information about whether or not Noah Song is going to come back from the Navy. We have no idea what his stuff looks like right now. It could have regressed significantly. That happens. It's a thing with guys who take that much time off. He could come back and be the same guy. And if he is, you know what, then we'll bump him right back up. But
right. We have no idea how much he's throwing. We have no idea if he's even set foot on a mound in 3 years. Like it's
how
just,
am I grading that?
There's too many question marks to rank him that it's not like a realistic comparison.
Yeah. So that's why he came out. He got pulled out. And that's why he's not ranked at this point. He's on the military list, and I hope he comes back. I liked watching him pitch.
But if he's happy in the military, I hope he stays and does that too.
Him.
Like, he should choose whatever makes him the happiest and whatever he wants to do. And I hope he's able to do that. And if he wants to, get a waiver to play baseball, great. If he doesn't, thank you for serving our country. Like, that's a great outcome for him too.
Exactly. I feel you. All right, let's move really quick then, Ian, to emails, shall we? Our first email comes from Tyler, and he emailed us at podcast@soxprospects.com. He said, "Hey, Chris and Ian, please explain why it's important for a lefty or righty, a left-handed pitcher or right-handed pitcher to develop a certain pitch to get the opposite-handed hitter out. I've always wondered." So he says maybe a changeup, and that's a good question. I'll let you take that because you look like you're kind of you're chewing at this one. I can tell.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of it's a swing path thing. So when you think about like a left-handed hitter and you're a righty, left-handed hitters, they tend to like pitches down and into them because they have that slight uppercut bat path. And so if you're a right-handed pitcher and you throw like sliders or curveballs, that's usually going to run into the bat of a lefty, whereas a changeup's going to be falling down and away from it. Mm-hmm. And so just in general, that type of pitch is more effective against opposite-sided hitters, something that's moving down and away from them versus something that's kind of coming in on them.
Yeah, it depends on bat path. And that's why, like, with one thing that the Giants do, if you really will get more minute with this, Giants,
there's like a way more detailed, like, analytical answer, but like, that's just like the general idea.
General one.
You're trying to pitch away from their bat. And the best way to do that is to have there's certain pitches that are better for that than others.
Yep. And because if you're looking at it as like the Giants literally platoon based on hitter bat path and the pitcher's pitches, which is kind of crazy to me, but
that's why you look at their lineup on roster resources, like 5 platoons, like legitimately.
It's crazy.
But there's also guys who like buck that trend, who will have like a slider that's just so good. And like Wyatt Olds is a good comparison. This is a good example of this. His slider is good enough that he was using it to both righties and lefties. And because when you're throwing it like 89 to 92, like you can get away with it. But there are other guys like Chris Murphy who can't throw certain pitches to other handed hitters because they just get demolished.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at like Thaddeus Ward, I think was a guy, if I'm remembering right, who could throw his slider to hitters from both sides because it tunneled great with his cutter.
Yeah.
And his fastball. And it worked.
And that's a lot of it is just A lot of it is just deception. It's you want pitches that look the same until very late and then move radically different directions. It's the whole tunneling idea.
Exactly.
And that's the thing is you want as many, you want as many different movement paths especially if you're a starter as possible.
You can throw in different locations too.
Exactly.
You're not throwing a curve up in the zone.
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
Like
no.
That's the thing. Next question is from Gregory. He says, hello.
That was a good question though.
Yeah, it was a great question. The next question is from Gregory. He says some scattered questions from spring training. How is the outfield defense from Christian Arroyo look to you? I didn't see him play a lot of it. We'll see.
We did. We saw him play an entire game.
I wasn't paying attention. Not the entire game.
I mean, Alex Cora talked about they thought he looked very good out there. Like,
yeah,
I think he'll be serviceable enough out there that it'll work for the platoon they're setting up.
Mm-hmm. His next question is: have you noticed anything about Bobby Dahlbeck's approach that might help with his contact rate? I've seen him hit a few high fastballs, but it's the spring.
I think the biggest thing with Dahlbeck this spring that I noticed is that he's really like toned down his leg kick.
Yep.
And if that sticks, because his power is still there, like that's very interesting. And he's I was looking at spring stats and the strikeout rate was down at spring. Who knows?
Great.
But if he can develop into like a 28% strikeout rate guy, like that's like a legit player right there. That's a potential everyday guy. Whereas if he's still going to be up in the 35 plus range again, or 32 plus, it's tough to project him as more than like a platoon bat.
And then the third question is, how has Tanner Houck's splitter look to you? I've seen a few quality ones, but you would know better. I mean, that's a very, we'll see when the season starts thing.
Yeah. With spring training and it's just hard, especially with pitchers, to read into things because very often they're working on certain pitches. They might not even throw certain pitches in outings, or like there's a famous, a scout was telling me a story about I'm not going to say who, but a certain major league pitcher who literally came out the first day of spring training and was throwing like 84 to 86 in the game. And everyone was freaking out. And he came out of the game and he was like, oh no, I was just spring training. I really don't care at all. Like you have no idea how, pitchers take spring training, like what they're going to be doing, what they're trying to do. And that's why it's really hard to read into it with the major league guys, especially.
Mm-hmm. Our next email comes from Spencer. He says, hey, Chris and Ian, greetings from Quebec, Canada. Appreciate the in-depth coverage and analysis on all things Boston Red Sox. I was wondering what kind of prospect compensation would require taking most of, if not all of Eric Hosmer's remaining contract, since average annual value is now recalculated when a player is traded. Guys that make the most sense to me, in my opinion, are Hassel, Camposano, Mears, Woods, etc., but not sure what you guys think. I mean, I
would want one of those guys.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen now. I would want one of those guys, though.
Yeah.
Because you saw they were getting close supposedly with the Mets, and they were giving up Chris Paddock and someone else
for Dom Smith.
Yeah, but Chris Paddock is that's a legit asset.
They just traded Chris Paddock for Taylor Rogers, who's
like an all-star closer last year. So there's part of the reason they had to give up Paddock is because the Twins ate all of Rogers' salary or something.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah,
I was wondering.
So that's why they had to give up. But they were giving up a legit asset to get rid of Hosmer. And I think the problem is the thing is the Mets just don't care at all, which good for Steve Cohen. I fully endorse if it's your money, you can do whatever he wants with it. But I think I don't see the Red Sox doing it with the new CBT calculation thing, which was it was a loophole that needed to be closed. So
yes. Next question. He says, secondly, I was looking at right-handed hitting outfielders / first baseman, and the guy that looks the most appealing to me is JD Davis, capable of playing left field, third base, first base, albeit not great defensively. I'm thinking Blaze Jordan and Jay Groom could get it done. I
think the problem with that for me is that he can't play right field, or I wouldn't want him playing right field at Fenway. And he's just very repetitive with what Dahlbeck is. It's a first base, third base, mostly can play left field. Maybe, they've tried Dahlbeck in left field and said that he's going to play some left field this year. I think he's too repetitive with them. I think they'd be looking more for someone who's a better defender in right, especially, or in the outfield, especially given what they've talked about, with valuing defense more.
And then our final email comes from our frequent emailer and the Patreon supporter, David B. And he says, hi, Ian and Chris, a few questions that I have after seeing the new rankings. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of these, but I suspect you'll be addressing them one way or another. First, although your looks of Marcelo Meyer were admittedly limited, you both sound clearly impressed. Having seen him in person, how close were you to swapping him and Tristan Casas at 1 and 2? We already spoke to that. Second, I know he's still in the top 30, but is there anything you could conceivably see from Connor Wong this year that would convince you to move him up the list? Where do you think he would be based on the current list if you were looking like an average hitter for a catcher or utility player and demonstrated the ability to competently play a couple other positions besides catcher? I mean, it's always tough for me to answer that because it's like, where would you rank this guy if he were a different player?
Yeah, I mean, if he could
He's
hit,
not.
I know,
but
I mean, if you're telling me he's a 50 hitter, he's a top 20 10. Prospect. Yeah,
top 10.
Yeah, probably.
He's an average MLB hitter or average hitter for a catcher, even.
And who can play catcher? Yeah,
who can
he's
catch?
He's a top 10 prospect.
He's top 10 easy for me. I've got him over Walter.
Yeah, he's but that's the issue, and the reason he's not is because what was it, 35% strikeout rate last year, 4% walk rate or something. This is not going to fly.
Yeah, I mean, if he hits enough to be a backup catcher, then I think he bumps back up into the top 20. But he's just got to show he can do that. To be like,
he's going to have to show
10-year backup catcher.
He's got to show the good defense, and he's got to show
to be Plawecki.
Yeah,
put it that way.
Exactly.
And then third, I'm curious what your takes are on Alex Pinellas and David Hamilton now that you've hopefully seen them in person. I think we talked a little about this last week, didn't we? Pinellas, there's pop.
Yeah, I mean, he's power right now. We'll see with the hit tool. That's going to be the big determining factor with him because it's not a great defender.
And Hamilton's fast.
Hamilton's super athletic. I think he's going to play multiple positions. Seems like a utility. As I talked about earlier, I think they're going to try. I would not be surprised at all if they try him in center field at some point, just because he's so fast. But yeah, I mean, I liked him at defense. He seemed like he could run a bit and have some decent contact skills at the plate. How he develops or where he goes is going to be largely dependent on what he can do at the plate. How much offensive ability is there.
And his last question, and this is the best one, I think. It seems there are always a few prospects you are leaning towards moving in the rankings, but you just need to see how the first month or two go. Which prospects are on your list of those who are very likely to move if you see something positive or negative early in the season? I think we've said those, but just to kind of put them in one place, Ian, some guys we've mentioned, Jimenez, Downs.
Yeah. Yep. Seabold.
Blaze. Miguel Bliss
once that season
going. Honestly, I think we said this last week, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility he breaks camp out of extended and going to Salem.
Yeah, I could see him following the Eduardo Lopez path from last year if he's clearly just way too good for extended, which I think was what happened with Lopez last year. I mean,
there's a lot of guys who could move quick, maybe not quick, but
there's a lot of guys that have very clear question marks that can be answered pretty easily.
Say Chris Murphy's getting righties out,
or Chris Murphy's showing at least average control, things like that. Or you go down to if Ronaldo Hernandez miraculously turns into a good defender, things like that, that's not realistic.
Not realistic.
No, but
what does Tyler Ruberstein do in Salem?
Well, that's what I was going to.
Does he become Brendan Walter?
On a more serious note, or for example, does Durbin Feltman's stuff come back? Sure. Is that if he's there, then he's back with that Kelly German Wallace group, things like that.
Well, Bizardo might still be here.
Fair, who knows with that. Same thing. With me is if Eduardo, I think an interesting one is if Eduardo Lopez is healthy and just starts tearing up Salem, he could get moved up pretty quickly because he definitely has, as we were talking about, he has fans around the game.
Mm-hmm. He's already 31. I mean, it depends. It's not like he's in the 50s, but yes, fair. I hear you.
There's a lot of guys though, I think that could apply to, but it's a good question. And I'm definitely interested to see a lot of these guys.
How about this?
Get things started.
We'll tell you in a month. How about that?
Nice. That was good.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, thank you all for the emails. Again, podcast@soxprospects.com. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. So we want to thank you all for listening. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at SP Chris Hatfield. Ian's at Ian Kundal. That's IANCUNDALL. So make sure you're following the website at Sox Prospects on Twitter and Instagram. I want to shout out our $5 level Patreon supporters at patreon.com/Sox Prospects. Don't forget that second part. And those $5 level supporters are Kyle C., Tyler Woodrow, Jeff Trainer, David Dardone, Tim Harding, Bill Stanton, Deb Kendall, Evan Kirkwood, Hurricanes 1, Chris Fox, James O'Hara, Nathan Kenyon, Andrew Wallen, David B., Ben Burnett, Al Mendel, Kevin Catrides, Ben NRI, Paul Denyer, Lundell Martin, Cassandra Gupta, James P. McMahon, Stephen Gregory, James Bailey, Andreas Goldstrand, Corey Perrick, Forrest Perkins, Mark Herman, Aaron Meta, Jeff Harwood, Jimmy Mountain, Brian Cowan, Dusty G. Pavel, Jordan Shabbat, Jeffrey Scruggs, Nicholas Staropoli, Bob Introne, Mike Puano, Chris Bollier, Curtis Waltman, Michael Stewart, Keith Fox, Caleb Farron, John Kane, Andrew K, Tim Ware, Michael Murphy, Kyle Sanborn, and Jason Stoneburner. I think that's about it, Ian. Anything else? Shout out again to Ed and Brian for our social media stuff they've been doing. They've been killing it. And shout out to our staff. Hit up the news page. The Cup of Coffee is back. The weekly notes are back. So make sure you're checking that daily. Check the site. Check out the new rankings. Send us emails. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back in your eardrums soon.